Hey, how often do you talk about your podcast? Hey there, Kim Parkinson here, and I am here to talk about how often you should be talking about each episode. And that means not just your podcast, which is going to be talked about continuously, nonstop, to your neighbor, the grocer, to the person at Dunkin' Donuts, to your Starbucks barista. Yeah, you get it. Everybody and anybody that you talk to, they should know about your podcast, because that is going to create the biggest amount of growth, right? Because you never know who you're going to talk to about your podcast. So here's the other thing. While, yes, you are talking about your podcast to all of these people, are you talking about each individual episode to all of these people? And that's actually something that's really a lot harder to do, right? Because you just never know what kind of person they are. You never know what they're going to be interested in. And that is going to be something that you might want to take into consideration, because you don't want to drive them away either, right? So you have done this spectacular episode. This episode is amazing. This episode is phenomenal. This episode is groundbreaking. And you're like, you know what? I love this episode. This episode was absolutely phenomenal. And you have already sent out the guest information assets. So they already have all the audiograms, all the quote graphics, all of the different types of everything that you advertise with. They have all that, the copy, the images, everything, right? And then you advertise this on your newsletter. You advertise this on your socials, and the episode bounces out and you're like, hey, it's been published. People are listening. And then you let it fade. Wow. No, don't do that. Talk about it some more. So that episode may have come out, say, on a Tuesday, but you want to make sure that you advertise about that episode every day that week if you can. That's going to create the biggest amount of buzz. Maybe you tell your guest that was on it that the episode comes out on Tuesday, but please, can you also send it out to your newsletter on Thursday? Because we want to continually grow those listeners. We want to make sure that those people are listening over and over and over again, or you're gaining new listeners, which is, of course, the ones that we want too, right? So if you haven't already got it in your plan to advertise your podcast again a week after it's been sent out, you might want to do that. Now, if you already have another podcast that's going to come out at that time, that's okay. Maybe there's correlation, right? Maybe you talked a little bit about something in one that is also talked about something in the other, and those actually have a little reach. Or maybe you had an interview with somebody on the first day of the month, and then you did a recap episode about it on the second to last week of the month. Something that just brings that episode back into the sphere of different people. So if they didn't listen and they caught that first one, then maybe they'll go back and they'll listen to the other one, right? You want to make sure that it's always kind of going back. If you have an episode that was really something that people absolutely love, the numbers on that particular one skyrocketed, you want to make sure that you advertise that one over and over and over again. It sounds kind of counterintuitive, like, hey, people are already finding this one. Why am I advertising about it? Because you really didn't reach out to 643 billion people, did you? I mean, if you did, then why are you watching this? But hey, thanks. But I would definitely say that you want to make sure that you are getting that information out there over and over and over again. And if it's your best played episode, it's the one most downloaded, the ones most people comment about, and that's the one that you really want people to know about. So get that out there for people, definitely. Then another thing that you should also think about is if you've done an interview and it's released on a Tuesday and you have put it up on your social medias on Wednesday and you talked about it in your newsletter on Thursday, and then you also sent out a quote graphic to your Instagram on Friday, and then maybe you set something up so that there was a little blurb about it on Saturday and Sunday, or maybe you just waited till Monday, whichever you want to choose. You'll want to make sure that you continuously talk about that. Sprinkle it in for the rest of the month. Sprinkle it in for another 6, 8, 10 weeks, or just sprinkle it in all the time, right? If that interview or that episode had anything to do with anything that you talk about, probably chances are you can talk about that in a previous episode, right? So like if you need to talk about batch recording, hey, go watch that video on batch recording, right? If you need to talk about how many times you need content and how often you should record, yeah, I got an episode about that too. So go ahead, go listen to that. And you might want to talk about that in future episodes. So keep bringing it up. Keep bringing it up. Bring up different episodes that resonated with you. Bring up episodes that maybe somebody just wrote a review about it and they were like, I absolutely loved episode blah, blah, blah about blah, blah, blah. Then maybe you should pay attention, because then maybe you should actually be talking about that episode a little more often so people will go and find that episode. So how often is too much to talk about an episode? Is there such a thing? I don't think so. No. Keep talking about it. Talk about episode 1 as much as you talk about episode 100. Actually, make sure you talk about episode 100 a whole hell of a lot, because episode 100 means that you've really done some really great, fantastic things. Heck, even episode 50. Well, actually, let me even go back even further. If you've got 9 episodes, you're ahead of a whole lot of people that pod faded. So congratulations. So way to go. But here's the thing. Just keep talking about them. If you have something that is seasonal, make sure that next time that season comes up, you talk about that again. Don't just assume people are going to go find that seasonal episode. No, then they may not. But talk about it. Put it in your episode. Talk about it in your episode. Make it part of the episode, and then send that information out with that new episode and make a podcast graphic about it at 9 a.m. and then one about today's episode at 2 p.m. Just get it out there so people can see and people can hear and people can go and follow. Always provide those links so that they don't have to go looking for it. But otherwise, advertise each podcast episode in perpetuity as evergreen, forever and ever and always, so you can grow your show and get your listeners up into the stratosphere and your voice and message out to them so that they can hear it. All right, until next time, talk to you soon.